this playoffs, does it change at all because of just how close everybody is? In the past, you'd have a few drivers who pretty much knew they'd get at least to the second round, if not the third.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it makes our playoffs a little bit easier than what it was last year because everyone in front of us is a little bit closer to us. So last year, whenever we got into the playoffs, we knew that we needed to capitalize on more bonus points this year. And this year, I think we ended up with a couple more, but just the whole field ended up, or a couple of the guys up front ended up with less points and kind of brought them back to us. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely not a clear-cut group of guys that, have a bunch of bonus points that can kind of cruise their way through the system. So gonna have to make sure that you perform, every single race. And I think that it's gonna increase the intensity for sure, because you can't have guys that are out there riding around like you could have in years past.
And what do you think changed after the first 5 or 6 races? Was it just luck, or did you guys do something, or did you race any sort of differently, or did anything change that kind of turned your season from that early hole?
Yeah, I think it was just misfortune early in the year, and just the way that the schedule lays out with Daytona starting the season. That's, it's so much is out of your control there. And then we went to California, ended up blowing up an engine. So, I think that a lot of it was just circumstantial stuff, and we performed well in those first 5 races. We just didn't have great box scores. So leaving those races, even though we were down in the points, I was still feeling good about our group and how we performed. And we finally started to get the results that we needed after we got some momentum on our side.
All right, our next question will come from Nathan Solomon. Go ahead, Nathan.
Thank you, Christopher. Thanks for the time today. Obviously, last year, first playoff run. This year, a little bit more momentum behind you. What have you learned from last year's playoff run that you can transfer over to this year?
Yeah, last year's playoff run was a definitely a learning experience, and just, not beating yourself. So the first round went decent. Even though we had a couple flaws, we were still able to make it through that first round. And then the second round, we started off at Las Vegas with a 24th place finish. So just not eliminating ourselves. I think that we have the performance capability in this number 20 group to make it deep into the playoffs. It's just going to be a matter of if we can execute and, get away with limiting our mistakes and getting the results that we are capable of getting.
And this summer has obviously been a really good strategy with the victory. How well do you think you can build off of that end of the first round, and how well do you like those 3 tracks here in the round of 16?
Yeah, so really all of the tracks minus Talladega, I really enjoy and have a lot of fun at. So, the playoffs, I think, plays well into our strengths with a bunch of 1.5 miles. Phoenix being the Final Four. Phoenix is a great racetrack for me. So we'll see how we can do. Looking at the near future with Darlington, Kansas, Bristol, I feel really good about all 3 of those tracks. And then even in the second round is probably going to be the hardest with Talladega and Roval. I say that it's all going to be hard, but Talladega Roval definitely throws it's a wild card round.
All right, let's go next to Pete Acabelli. Go ahead with your question, Pete.
Christopher, there's been a bunch of talk after that late accident at Daytona about the safety of the next-gen car. Do you feel it's as safe as it could be? Do you think NASCAR maybe needs to do a little work on improving safety? Some of the guys have talked about, feeling the hits a little bit more this year than in some years past.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really, really big deal, and it needs to be addressed rather sooner rather than later. We have a guy that never mind, I'm not going to go down that path, but it needs to be addressed for sure. I mean, out of the few small hits that I've taken, you feel it a lot more, and most of the time it's in your head, not your body.
Thank you.
Next we'll go to Mitchell Brewer. Go ahead, Mitchell.
Christopher, how much pressure is there to start the playoffs off with a solid run at Darlington? Does that make that race more of a pressure-packed race just because you want to start on a solid note?
Yes and no. You know, Darlington is just such a tough racetrack, and the Southern 500 is such a long race that you just got to not beat yourself. And guys are going to have adversity. Last year, I think out of the 16 playoff drivers, darn near every single one of them had their own problems throughout the course of the race. So just making sure that you get through there clean is the number one goal. And the round of 16 kind of has been that way, at least for me, the last 2 years, as just don't beat yourself. Make sure that you take your top 10 or whatever you're capable of, whether that's a top 10, top 5, top 3. You need to maximize your day and move on to the next one. But Darlington's a really easy place to get yourself in trouble, and that's going to be the number one no-no going into the weekend.
Thank you.
Next, we'll go to Dustin Long. Go ahead, Dustin.
Thank you. Hey, Christopher, you referenced earlier the mile and a half. The Toyotas have been really, really strong there, and we've seen a lot of speed there. It almost seems like there's a pathway just exclusively through the mile and a half for almost any Toyota to get up to Phoenix with the way it's set up with so many mile and a half. How does that help you guys? You know, some of the mile and a half were taken away out. Obviously, you don't consider Atlanta a mile and a half in the sense it's super speedway racing. So lost a couple of those races, but to have so many mile and a halves for in the playoffs, how does that help you and Toyota as a group?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the racetracks really play into our hands for sure. I would expect Darlington, Kansas, Homestead, Texas, Vegas, all of those racetracks to be tracks that we perform well at. You know, the Roval is definitely one that we have circled on a place that we need to focus on to get better. That's no secret, but I mean, the tracks are there. So hopefully we're able to execute on the tracks that we're good at and have great showings. And it's, you know, it's always easier said than done because everyone is going to be bringing their best stuff. So I wouldn't expect the Toyotas to have a huge advantage, but you know, those are our strengths for sure.
And also you referenced the hits, and I know that at one point there was some talk about does anything need to be done with the head protection, the head support, and I know some guys it's a comfort factor as much as you don't want your head too close because then you're feeling every bounce of this car. Have you adjusted any of your head support since your contacts this year or even here lately, or is that something that you know you feel like you're as good as possible and there's nothing that you can do to help yourself in these situations?
Yeah, I mean, my seat, my headrest, I'm very content with, and it's been the same thing that I've had for the last number of years. And you know, it's by the rule book, and it you know passes all the inspections and stuff like that. So you know, it's just a matter of getting the car to absorb the impacts and not your body and specifically your head. So you know, it's a big deal, and I hope that we're NASCAR is able to make some progress on it here quickly.
Thank you.
Next question will come from David Hoffman. Go ahead, David.
Thank you. Christopher, I know having Adam Stevens on top of the box with his experience in the playoffs, how beneficial is that to have him, especially as it comes to crunch time here?
Yeah, Adam's definitely one of the best crew chiefs you could ask for, a guy that has won 2 championships, and before last year, I think he made the Final Four darn near every year with Kyle. So he definitely knows the ins and out of it, and it's really cool just being able to sit with him in his office. He has everything mapped out on roughly how he expects it to lay out and how many points we need to win per event. So he's been around the block for sure. So I rely on him a lot to lead us down this path, and you know, I feel like if I do my job, then we're going to have a really good shot at making or at least having a great showing.
Thank you.
Next, we'll go to Matthias Vienna. Go ahead with your question.
Hello, Christopher. I am Matthias Vienna. My questions are 2. What are your expectations from this second playoff in NASCAR Cup?
Yeah, so my expectations are to hopefully make the round of 8. You know, last year we made the round of 12, and I feel like we're stronger than where we were last year. And last year, if we didn't have a bad race in the round of 12, we arguably were in the hunt for the round of 8. So hopefully we can get to the round of 8 and see where our performance stacks up there.
What tracks do you like the most in the 10 races?
Yeah, that's a tough question because I really enjoy a handful of them. You know, Darlington's a great track. Kansas, Bristol, it makes up the entire first round, are all good tracks for me. Talladega, Roval are definitely my 2 least favorite, but it's mixed in there with Vegas, Texas, Homestead, Martinsville. So, you know, they're all really good racetracks for me, minus the Talladega and Roval.
How much did the win in New Hampshire emotionally?
Yeah, winning New Hampshire was it was obviously a really big burst of gratifying feelings because, you know, we were right in the middle of the points hunt to make it in. And as it turns out, only one guy made it into the driver's points off of the point standings. So that was going to be very tough to do. And we got in on the owner side and the driver's side. So it was a really, really big deal for sure.
Christopher, have a good luck and a good year in NASCAR.
Thank you.
Dustin, do you have another question?
Yes. Hey, Christopher, there's certainly been talk after Daytona about what can be done in terms of weather for you guys. Obviously, I know you weren't involved in that situation, but you've been at New Hampshire and Texas the last couple of years. Obviously, it's a challenging situation, but I don't know if you've got some ideas or thoughts of, you know, I'm not in the car, so I don't know what you guys go through and what you guys need that maybe we don't see. What can be learned, or what should be moving forward done in terms of weather issues and you guys, and understanding that, you know, there's a lot of different things in play in those situations.
Yeah, man, I wish I had a good answer for you, but I really don't. You know, it puts everybody, or at least NASCAR, in a big box because they are under an extreme amount of pressure to race as quick as we can and, you know, get as much of the race in while we can. So, you know, I don't really think that there is no real answer. You know, we try and race as soon as possible, and we try and race as long as we can before it starts to rain again. So, you know, obviously making sure you hit the yellow button before the rain comes is important, and then getting the track dry and racing as quick as we can once it's dry is important. So I don't really know if there's any way around that.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, Christopher, that looks to be all the questions for you this morning. Thank you for hopping on with us, and we wish you the best of luck going into the NASCAR Cup Series playoffs kicking off this weekend at Darlington.
Thank you. See you.